For the last of these videos, we're going to talk about the grades tab. So in this case, I'm actually in my course from last year, because otherwise, without any students, you can't see any grades. So up at the top, the last of the options is grades. So we hit hit grades over here. It'll give you essentially looks like a grade book. So here's your students, the various assignments with the due dates, what they have them or not. They'll be in order of when you've posted them. So since all of these are ungraded, that's why it has the class average of not applicable. And then down here, you see whether they've turned it in or they're missing. If these were graded assignments, you would have 10 out of 10, 20 out of 30, however you have. So missings means they haven't completed it. Turned in means it's turned in. It'll also tell you if they did it late or not. So for example, done late here. The tricky thing is if you're sending them to outside websites to do work or things like that, if they forget to click the check-in or the turned in button, it will either leave it blank or show it as missing. So it gets a little bit tricky to actually keep track of it. So in each case, though, each assignment, you can return it or you can view their submission, which is the same thing as each individual student. So return essentially gives them their grade back and any comments that you've made. Missing, same thing. So for each individual assignment. So if you look at the top, if I click on the title, it'll actually take me to the assignment page. So up at the top, you have the student work and the instructions. So the instructions, this was the post. I just put a Google form in here, which had all the directions, so they knew they just had to click on it. For student work, it tells you who's turned it in, who is assigned. Right now, this is saying all, but if I click this drop-down menu, I can look at only the students who have turned it in or the ones who have assigned, which essentially are the ones that are missing the assignment. So I'll leave it back on all. Over here, you can sort it by status, sort by last name, so by first name, sort by status. We'll put all the turned ins on top and then the missings on the bottom. The check mark box here, I can return all the turned ins, say, hey, you've done it, that's good. If this was graded, this would be a field that would let me enter scores. So up here, this currently assignment is ungraded, but can I change it? Yeah, so I updated the point value, 10 points. So update, and now it'll think about it for a while, and now these all become out of 10s. So if I enter a score, I can then return the grade and I'll email Emma and say, hey, you got 5 out of 10 on this assignment. But we'll leave it as ungraded. So if you notice now it says draft because I started marking hers, but did not finish it. Down here, you can add a comment saying good job, anything like that, in addition to the grade that you give the student. The email will let you email individual students. But once again, it opens it in a new thing. And since I have all students checked, it'll do a blind carbon copy again. So all the students, so you can just use that to say, hey, I finished grading these things. These types of assignments will show up here. If I click on the triple bars, the to review assignments that you have assigned but have not graded will show up in the to review. So if you notice, none of those had been returned. So they all still show up here. Once you return an assignment, it'll remove it from your to-do list. So this is the ones that need to be reviewed. And over here, the assignments that I already have reviewed, which I didn't review any because I just gave them completion scores. So let's go back to the grades. So then you're here. Since we're using Skyward, the grades tab's kind of not necessarily very useful unless you're going to put every assignment in here anyway, but they're going to check their grades on Skyward more likely than on Google Classroom. So it's nice, I suppose, if you're giving papers or things that have multiple edits, you can return their score and say, here's what you're currently sitting at, and then they can resubmit it in Google Classroom before you enter a final grade into Skyward. But that's the grades column or grades tab.